Our political experts here now, former Republican Congressman from Virginia, Congresswoman Barbara Comstock. I always say that, Barbara. My goodness, it just is slip of the tongue. Congresswoman. Also, our political director for Hillary Clinton, formerly Amanda Renteria. I talk too fast. They're also our ABC News contributors. All right, Amanda, let's start with you. What do you make of the vote in Kansas here to protect abortion rights? Is that a bellwether, you think, for the rest of the country?
It's certainly a message that Democrats have been talking about a lot. And when the decision was made, everyone said we will see people engage, get fired up about this. And this is the first real test whether or not that was true. And there's no doubt that there's an astounding voice here in Kansas, in a red state, that came out and said, we want to make sure we're not changing constitutions that limit our access. And so I think all across, it is now sending a message to every campaign out there that we need to begin to have this conversation, that there are women, families, et cetera, out there who have been utilizing this, who understand the importance of it. And that's really put the message to the test, whether it was actually true that it would galvanize and energize supporters. And in Kansas, in August, in a midterm, to see the kind of numbers we are seeing is absolutely sending a message to everyone that women do want to have a say. Families don't want government in their healthcare decisions in this way. And so there's a lot to really unpack here. I also want to note, when you see something like this, there is a question. Did people vote to not change a constitution? Did people vote because they felt Republicans were becoming too extreme on this issue? Or did they vote for women to have a voice in their family and healthcare decisions? That nuance is still going to be important as campaigns go district by district, figuring out how do you use this as a galvanizing issue? How do you have a conversation about an important thing to families and women right now that is a topic of discussion as we go into the 90 days to midterms?
Barbara, should Republicans be worried heading into November?
Well, I think they certainly should be concerned because this was a red state and it was Republicans who put it on the ballot and they thought they were going to win. I think the reality is the American people are in the middle. And unfortunately, we often hear just from the extremes, either on the left or the right. So since the decision, you've had a lot of people on the right, talk about having life of the mother exceptions that I, as a pro-life voter, always, supported those type of exceptions. And whereas people were talking about maybe a 15-week ban or later after the first trimester, they're moving things back and even talking about banning birth control. So I think the extremes that have dominated the discussion over the past month have really hurt Republicans. And I think you saw that here. So I think going forward, Republicans are going to have to be much more sober about how they address this issue and be in touch with the people and not have this vast, change either to the left or to the right. Democrats got hurt when they were defending, having 9-month abortions, 8-term abortions.
Right. So, Amanda, let's talk about the primaries now. What do these results tell you about Trump's hold over the Republican Party? And how have his false election fraud claims played a role here?
Well, I think you can see that in the Republican Party, it really did make a difference to have Trump's support in Michigan, in Arizona. And I think as those folks move to the general, the question is going to be, how does that sustain itself? So this is more of a question I almost think for Barbara in terms of how do we see the Republican Party managing this moment. But I will say independents have changed quite a bit because of the January hearings. It is actually surfacing that conversation. So what I take away is the January 6th hearings have brought the truth forward, but there's still a very strong Republican base that is moving on the big lie. The question is going to be, what are those candidates going to do now? And will that harm them as they move to the general election? That is still left to be determined, how these campaigns actually inform people about the truth, how they handle this big lie going forward, and how the candidates actually adjust or whether they adjust. I think the X factor here is also, what does Trump do? How does Trump react now going from here into the general? If his rhetoric gets more intense on the big lie, I think that adds different pressures to these candidates. And certainly, no doubt, he woke up today recognizing that he has some influence in Michigan and in Arizona. And so what will he do to utilize that as these candidates go into a general election where independents will have a bigger voice in what happens in the midterms?
All right, Barbara, so how do you manage the base considering Trump's influence now?
Well, I think a lot of Republicans, like when Mike Pence got in some of these, the race in Arizona and other races, it's too little too late. And we have a bunch of Republicans who are like Neville Chamberlain Republicans trying to appease Trump and his election conspiracies when we really need more Churchillian actions and Cheneys, and the more Republicans allow these type of election denier nuts to get into the general election, I think we're going to see a lot more problems. I think, Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania is a problem. And I think, and as well as Dr. Oz, I think the Arizona ticket up and down is a disaster. And I've already talked to a lot of Republicans who are going to be opposing it in Michigan. I think you also have that, people were groveling for this endorsement from Trump is going to hurt Tudor Dixon, who's also on the ballot with an abortion referendum. So, and she also has taken the position, I believe, of no exceptions, which again is something that I think is problematic. So I think Carrie Lake is, Trump in a skirt, and I think that is a disaster for a swing state. She should not. Is not fit for office. She's unvetted, and I think you're going to find out a lot of ridiculous things about her. And as for John Gibbs beating Peter Meyer, that's going to be a gimme to the Democrats. I certainly hope it is. It's disgraceful that Democrats put money into that. But unfortunately, that's going to be a seat that I think Republicans will lose because, again, that's a ridiculous candidate who is just an election denier. So there's a lot of us Republicans who are going to be opposing election deniers in the fall. And Trump's already hurting the party in that way.
I still can't get by Trump in a skirt. I think that's going to go down as the best line of the day.
Yeah,
Amanda.
Well, it's not an appealing picture, is it? Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not. I think Kerry would look a lot better than Trump would. But with that said, Amanda, Barbara pointing out there she foresees many more problems with Trump's hold, with his influence. So what direction now do you see the Democratic Party going? And how do they move forward and react, taking in all these GOP primary wins?
I think it's important for Democrats to stay in the reasonable lane, to have these discussions about how are we going to bring people together, what kinds of policies, how are we going to get back to a respectful dialogue. We know exactly the way Trump runs, and what we're seeing is folks are not backing away from that. So how do you catch independents who really want a productive dialogue, want Congress, government institutions to work again? I think that will be compelling. I also think, of course, protecting women's choices and not going to the extreme will be a topic of conversation that we're going to see more of in these next 90 plus days going into the midterms. So I think Democrats are in a really important moment right now where it is up to a lot of these candidates to now reach across the aisle and say, let's not go to the extremes. Let's be reasonable. Let's bring this country back together and have some healthy dialogue.
All right, Amanda Renteria, Barbara Comstock, always healthy dialogue with you two. Thank you so much. Appreciate you both.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.